I would like to welcome Talia Eisenberg to the podcast today. She is an amazing woman who is a co-creator of the Beond facility in Cancun, Mexico, where they utilize Ibogaine and it is helping to heal and change lives. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
So Talia, can you tell us about Ibogaine and where it comes from?
Sure. So Ibogaine comes from a root. It's a root bark that comes from Gabon, Africa. It's also found in other areas in, Western Africa. It's been utilized for thousands of years in various tribes, one called the Bwiti, for rites of passage. And when a member of the tribe is of age, it's given to them to help them become a leader, essentially. So
So like in the Native American culture when they do the vision quest, kind of like that there's like a coming of age ceremony that happens, right? So is it like
correct. Yes, and its purpose is to connect people to their ancestors, show them who they are. um you experience a lucid dream state, so it's a very spiritual experience done in ritual for multiple days in the Bwiti culture, and they use the root bark. There's face painting and there's music, and it's a celebration. And really it's a way to connect, right, to something greater and the community as a whole. And so we've lost a lot of these rituals in modern society, and I would say, and many others would say, it's probably why we have such a rampant addiction problem, because as we know, isolation is part of addiction.
Yeah.
So they've been utilizing it as a technology for centuries and centuries. And then what happened was, in the West here in the 80s, a man named Howard Lotsoff, who was experimenting with various psychedelics, he was connected to researchers. He happened to be a heroin addict. He was working at NYU, and he tried, a friend of his brought him this plant medicine. He was going to use it just to have a psychospiritual experience, and the next day he realized he didn't have cravings for heroin anymore. So he went on to treat many people in his community and his friends, and then they went on and they started treating people underground in Amsterdam and in New York. And from there it sort of spread, up until researchers got a hold of it, and there was a study 30 years ago, and yeah, clinics have begun opening.
Yeah.
And obviously, the opiate crisis has become a crisis and an epidemic just in the last 20 years. So there's more of a need for it. And we always say it's not a silver bullet. But what is amazing about it is it does interrupt, it provides a rapid detox, and it interrupts most of the cravings for chemicals and drugs, opiates, other alcohol, other things as well. And I think so it gives you the physiological reset, but also it provides you insight into why you are trying to numb in the first place. So it shows you, it can show you, it depends on the person, it can show you various aspects of your childhood, your genetic predispositions, ways in which you're hurting that you can't access through traditional therapy a lot. So you have this visceral transformation in your body. So there is a very powerful energy behind it, and there's still more to be researched related to how it works and mechanisms of action. But yeah, and we've found that obviously the key is preparing people that do come to Beonds through coaching, through therapy, so that they have a strong intention and goal, and then they can align that with their plant medicine journey with Ibogaine. And then afterwards, they're able to process and look at what came up and develop a plan that's unique to each person with their therapist for when they do go home, because it's found that Ibogaine stays in your liver, converts to something called noribogaine. At least that's what's believed by researchers. And that stays in your system for up to 90 days. And it promotes neuroplasticity, which is what helps you create new habits. And Ibogaine is a natural, as you know, it has natural antidepressant qualities. So when people leave us, they feel very much more excited about life than they did when they came in. You know, often people come in and there's no color in their eyes, no light, and they leave, you know, feeling hopeful about life. And they have this window to really create these new habits and ways of being. The, you know, monkey is off their back, the cravings, most of them have hopefully subsided, and they're able to focus on who they are and what they love in life, really. And so that's our job at Beond, is not just separate them from chemicals or, you know, behavioral addictions like sex, love, eating disorders, gambling, things like that, but really the question becomes, who are you as a unique soul? What should you be doing in this life, and how can you do it? Because a lot of the shame also gets worked through while they're with us during the journey. And as you know, I think shame is a big reason why people don't do what they love in this world, right? They don't feel worthy or good enough.
The biggest one, I think, is the shame of just not fitting in, not feeling value. But I wanted to ask too, because this has been deemed illegal in the U.S., right? The use of this actual plant medicine was put on the list was it in the 80s or in the 90s?
Earlier than that, with all the psychedelics along with LSD, you know, during the hippie revolution, because yeah, I think the government saw them as a threat. They get people to think for themselves. And Ibogaine is the one psychedelic that isn't used recreationally. It's not something you want to do just to trip.
It's
It's
super intense. I mean, it's like a
super in, it's
14-hour
super
experience.
yeah, it's super intense, and there's cardio, you know, toxicity issues. So
Right.
working with
Some of the side
physicians,
effects, correct?
correct. So you want to have, you know, we have strict medical protocols, and working with physicians to screen people before they even come is very important. There's labs and EKGs on site. Um, it creates, you know, QT prolongations of the heart. So you really, you know, when it's done in a safe setting, it is pretty safe, but it's not something you want to do at home by yourself or even with a friend who's not trained medically. Um so yeah, but it was banned even before, I think, those cardiac issues, the potential was known. Just, I think, you know, a lot of these psychedelics were, because most of these medicines do put you in touch with who you really are. And we live in a society that's about efficiency and following the next person and really creating value, you know, capitalism. And it's a whole nother story, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, and too, it goes against the narrative of pharmaceutical, right? We've been trained in American society to use antidepressants and anti-anxiety and all these different types of medications that actually really don't do anything for the root cause of the trauma or the issue. And this is a money making machine. We all know it. I had a session the other day with my spiritual therapist, I guess is what I could call him. He was talking about the pharmaceutical industry and the word pharmacy and the Latin meaning of that, really meaning sorcery. And I
Right.
thought that to me blew my mind, because it was connecting these two things of like somebody controlling, like behind the curtain, kind of controlling people with these different tools, I guess. And when I was like, oh, it's all about how can we kind of hypnotize, and this is my interpretation, the public to believe what we're selling in order to turn a profit. I mean, it's upsetting, and it's where in the rehabs here in LA, let's be real, they're great, but they also prescribe. So it's, you come into treatment, they give you a list of things to take. So it's not just oh, we're going to detox you. It's okay, here's something to sleep, here's something to calm your anxiety, here's something for your overactive mind here. So Jack got a list, my son got a list of probably 8 different medications that they put him on as he was admitted.
Wow.
And you think, oh my, as his parent, I was just horrified, because I thought, here's somebody who's struggling with one addiction, right, to something else, and then you're just going to give him something else to medicate and be addicted to. Like, it baffled my mind.
Yeah, what are we teaching people? We're
Yeah.
teaching them to treat the symptom and not to be with the underlying, we know now through breath work, through, nutrition, through supplements, through physical activity, we can heal a lot of the underlying causes, right? We can learn to be with these feelings of dis-ease. I always like that, dis-ease. And I think that it's easier, it's become a numbers game for many of these rehabs in the US, and it's easier just to treat the symptom.
Yeah.
And it's too bad, because most of these people just keep going through the same rehabs, right? It's a business. And
It's a huge business.
it's,
And a lot of times it doesn't. I mean, I think the numbers were like, it was like 15%, especially with opioids. Being very real, like the opioid addiction. I would go into treatment facilities and say, can you please tell me a success story
yeah,
with opioids, with this specific drug? And not one. I didn't hear one, not one. And so that's when I started to understand there has to be something beyond this, right?
yeah,
And we just got magically connected, you and I, and just in the facility through Carrie and through all these other different connections, where it just kept coming up, like, to look at Ibogaine as a possible treatment.
yeah.
So I went to,
I'm so glad that you're asking these questions. I think every mother should. What are the success rates and why are they so low? And I'm grateful that you were connected to us and you could see with your own eyes how it works. I think what's amazing about Ibogaine that way is that it does get you through the detox. People don't have to experience those post-acute withdrawals, because most people do choose to go back to opiates, or it's not even a choice, I would say, because they haven't, even if you're in a rehab for 30, 60, or 90 days, you don't get past those post-acute withdrawals. Whereas with Ibogaine, also, it's the more compassionate way. You don't have to suffer. We give our doctors and nurses prescribe lower doses of morphine so that there isn't that awful withdrawal. Like, many people leave rehab even during the detox, right? And we're able to give them the Ibogaine 8 or 9 hours after their last dose of morphine. We're not giving them morphine to get high, but they don't need to go through the agony of the, diarrhea, the sweating, the shaking. And I can just speak from my own experience. I was an opiate addict from the age of like 19 to 22. And the reason I never wanted to get off of it, of course, was because of how horrific the initial 4 or 5 day detox was. But after 2 weeks of just going through that detox, I realized something in my brain, I needed an opiate, even if I had gotten through the, restless legs and not sleeping and the diarrhea and literally wanting to tear my skin off. I would still need something. And that's when I found Ibogaine and experienced the physiological reset. And being honest, then there's a whole nother host of problems. You get through that, the desire for the opiates is gone, but that's when you really have to look at yourself and do the deeper work. Okay, what is my trauma? Why am I suffering? Why do I want to numb? How can I learn to step into my own power? For me, it was going back to school and actually doing something I liked in college, and then going on to get an MBA in sustainability. And it was working with indigenous groups in Peru. It was repairing my relationship with my father and forgiving him, forgiving myself for things that I had done. And
Yeah.
that's where the bigger piece comes in. So
Did you do
yeah.
that right after the treatment? So at 22, you were able to experience Ibogaine for the first time and then go decide to go back to school?
No, no, it's slow. These plants work slow a lot of the time. So right afterwards, I was able to move to Boulder, leave New York City. Took a year off of school and life and just did yoga and hiked around and was able to do that. But it took a while, right? I was very insecure. I felt naked, really. I didn't know who I was. I had a big ego. I was angry and lost, but I built a community. I tried various self-help groups. I was very lucky to have found one of the early MDMA therapists that Rick Doblin from MAPS, he credits start taking MDMA through the FDA to this woman from South America who's a therapist in Boulder. And she sort of mothered me back to life and became my therapist in Boulder. So it took time and patience. And, I took years before the reactivity with my own family was worked through, and we're met 13 years later. Now today I can really just love them for them, but it's been a journey, right? And but in a way, like, it's been the biggest blessing to have the experience of an addict and the feeling of slavery, and to be able to get out of that and find something greater than myself and know that I'm actually not in charge, and there is something intelligent that's guiding myself and every one of us. That's been my path. And you know I think also related to addiction, right? It's a spectrum that we all struggle with, whether it's personal relationships or chemicals. Or we see a lot of, for example, moms who drink wine every night and they're high functioning, and there's businessmen, and and then of course there's addicts living on the street who are really struggling. But we're also all carrying our the DNA of our ancestors, whether your family went through the, potato famine, or for me, it was Auschwitz, or we've all been through so much if we chart our generations past, and we're carrying a lot of that anxiety, the depression, and these plant medicines have been here before us, and they know they're wise allies.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so beautiful. Yeah, I can attest. I mean, just being a mom, the wine addiction that women have is intense. I mean, that's like I mean, I don't even say recovered. I stopped drinking probably when I was around 35, 36. Just wine, and then slowly all other alcohol, because started to make me sick. I actually was
Yeah.
getting sick from it, so I was having reverse issues. But I think, as women, we're so stressed by the end of the day, and then going home and doing all the mother things. The idea that you were having a glass of wine was like, oh, good, I can decompress, I can do this. And you put that, basically that power into that substance, whatever the substance is. And then the substance then gives you calm, relaxation, kind of vibe, chilling out or whatever you want to call it. And then so I remember would have to start to retrain my mind of like what, because I was looking for things like what else could I take and what else can I do to calm my body instead of
Yeah,
actually calming my body,
from
right?
inside
or,
out. We've
or
been taught our society is very sick, obviously. We've been taught that the answers are outside in versus inside out. And we can retrain ourselves to go inside through mindfulness, through nature, through breath work. It's all in us, right? We know that, but it takes time and it takes pausing and it takes, like, I just did yoga for an hour right before this, thank God. But I know now I need to do these things on a daily basis. Otherwise, I start to lose it, right? And so that comes down to self-love. But yeah, the alcohol, you're right, it dims our consciousness. Not saying everyone should stop, but
no, yeah,
it definitely there's a dependency that can be created if used nightly. I see that with a lot of mothers that come to us. So
mhm.
good for you for noticing that, and you seem really happy. So that's great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I am, but it doesn't mean that your life just becomes easy. You know, you
Oh,
can
no,
you can stop using substance, or you can have all these things. It doesn't mean.
it never becomes easy. Life keeps happening, and there's all kinds of chaos around. But it's that idea of being in the eye of the tornado or the storm, and being able to stay centered and on the surfboard. And you know,
Yeah.
what's that saying about you ride the wave, don't let the wave ride you? Or, yeah. So it's all a training. Like, I like to look at life. Right? It's like it's a school. We've all come here to learn, really. And we're learning and we fall and we pick ourselves back up. And I think that's true with addiction as well. And I do think that's why we sort of need to change this. I have a lot of respect for 12 step. Like, I didn't get sober through 12 step, but it has helped me. I've been a part of it. I go sometimes. It helps me to get out of my ego, the service elements, helping other women. Parts of the steps are genius, but this whole model of black or white sobriety also, and I am an addict, I'm broken. I think it's sort of it's shifting. It's an older paradigm. I mean, certainly it saves a lot of people's lives, so I'm not going to knock it. But when you do look at the statistics, they are very low for the number of people that it works for. So this idea of like, oh, it's a relapse, it's a total failure, no longer works, because we were just talking about this before this started going live. From what I've seen over the past 13 years, it's healing is not linear. It's more circular, and we're learning and we're getting smarter, and there's wisdom in falling down, as long as you don't die, right? That's the risk nowadays with something like fentanyl, which didn't exist 13 years ago when I was using opiates, is that it's very powerful nowadays. And you don't know what you're getting, and people come to us thinking that they're just taking Vicodin from the streets, but we test, right? And there's usually always fentanyl. There's even methadone in it now. I mean, it's
Right?
it's scary. Vicodin and Percocets that are bought from the street, they look like Vicodin and Percocets that you get from a pharmacy. They have the same numbers on them, and they're cut the same way, but they're cut with fentanyl, and it's just very hard to get off of. It's much harder to get off of. Um, so, and like we were talking about, there's the overdose rates have increased, the CDC said, from 2020 to 2021 by 30%, partially because of COVID and the isolation and loneliness, and partially because of fentanyl. And that number's at 100,000 a year now, which means like and in the United States alone, that means every 5 minutes there is an overdose in the United States. And we hear about them all the time, sometimes even clients, there's been a few that have wanted to come to us and haven't made it. So it's very scary. And um, again, I think that people can do it. I think anyone can heal, right? But it takes commitment, it takes willingness. And I think that Ibogaine is not an answer to addiction, but it is a very profound and useful tool when aligned with intentions and a level of willingness. It works for everyone to interrupt addiction and minimize most of the withdrawals and the rapid detox, but it doesn't work well when someone doesn't truly want it, right? It gives you the choice back, because in active addiction, you lose the choice. But sometimes people choose to go back to sleep, right? They're not ready, they haven't suffered enough, I don't know what it is, it's sad, but it's not their time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we do at Beond. We prepare people. We have the physicians and a lot of nurses and therapists, and we're seeing pretty remarkable results on a daily basis. And it's inspiring work. It's tough work. You know, I can also talk about the family system, because I've also learned that a lot of it comes down to programmings and learnings from the family unit. And a lot of the time, the chemically dependent person or behaviorally dependent person is made sort of like the scapegoat in the family, so that the family doesn't have to look at their own part in it. So what we see with Ibogaine is, if people are open and willing, there can be a huge healing for the entire family too. Like, what's my part in this person who's using in their disorder, really?
Right.
So
It's,
yeah.
yeah. It's incredible. It's really an incredible tool. And what can you tell us, like, what, and I asked this question, I think, before when I was at the facility, what is the success rate that you guys have seen, especially with opioids in particular?
Well, our therapists are following up with people every couple weeks after they leave. And, I guess it depends how you define success. If it's sobriety, complete sobriety, it seems like 60% of the people, I mean, this comes from them, so hopefully it's true, and I want to believe it. I would say about 60% of people stay off of opiates. Those that don't, they have lapses. They're shorter term. They are very honest about it. They call, or we can connect to them, and they talk about it, and they say, okay, that is not what I want to do. I'll just be very honest. I haven't used opiate, alcohol, or stimulants for 13 years, but when I did leave my Ibogaine treatment, I did have like a 5-day relapse. And that was because, it works to interrupt the addiction, but I was left with so much underlying anxiety. And what I knew was using this to numb that anxiety, right? And I didn't know what to do with myself and my body. So I did pick up an opiate for 4 or 5 days. Um, and I think that happens, right? And that's why the support afterwards is so important. For me, it was nature, yoga, recovery groups, um,
Are
being,
there,
yeah.
are there
But I think that happens, but the success rates are higher and than traditional rehab, that's for sure. And there's even research from one of our advisors, Dr. Joseph Barsuglia, on that, and the success rates. So we know that.
Yeah, that's incredible. So 60%, even if it's just um, coming off of that hard drug, or hard aspect, and really finding that type of success is kind of unheard of.
I think it's because also the coaching and therapy afterwards is very important. So we bake into the program coaches and therapists who have done Ibogaine themselves, who've been through a pretty rigorous training program, and people work with that person before they come and after they leave. So when they do feel the anxiety, they can speak to somebody who's gone before them who has similar experience, whether it's chemical dependency or behavioral dependency, and they have like that buddy to talk to. I think that's a big component, and then there's other components that are important. But yeah, um, it's exciting work, and I hope that one day this can be medicalized in the U.S. and be more accepted. I think that we can prove that when done safely, when there's heart monitoring, when there's lab work, when there's screening out of people that have certain personality disorders and pre-existing heart conditions, it is fairly safe, and that's my hope.
It's
Um,
a heck of a lot safer than fentanyl, and
that's,
these other things. So,
that's true.
yeah, I mean,
I
it,
remember when you said to me you were dropping Jack off, your son, you were like, well, it is scary, but then again, he's using these other things that are much more scarier. So the risk is less. And I think this is a better way to go than just letting him,
right.
use fentanyl or something.
I know it's when it's kind of crazy when I can try to conceptualize this idea that you know people are out there using something, they're addicted to something that is completely controlling them, right? They're just completely controlled, especially by fentanyl. And the kind of it's almost like you're gambling. It's like roulette is what it feels like, because you don't know what the next batch is going to be. I mean, they keep talking about how this is getting into everything from drugs that people are buying on the street, but also people are starting to put it into other things, that whether they're smoking them or and a lot of people don't know. So there's kids that are in even high school age that are going to a party and they don't even know what they're getting, and then they're going.
Overdosing. Yeah, I've heard that, like MDMA or
And for
even.
for Halloween this year, we got,
Yeah.
I don't know if you got the same thing, but our school district and Burbank, PD sent out a whole bunch of flyers and emails and check all your Halloween candy. So it was Halloween and fentanyl. That this was combined into all the information that was going out to us, that basically the candy could have fentanyl cut into it. And
It's so sad. It's sad because it's robbing like the innocence of children even. Like they can't have just a normal Halloween, I saw that. Like watch out for rainbow candy that's not wrapped in, Hershey's bars or something because it could be fentanyl. Yeah. I have a 4-year-old, so that was like, wow, okay.
yeah,
But yeah, I think, fentanyl, it's cheaper, right? That's why dealers use it. And you can sort of chart it's made in labs, and comes from India and China, and it's a way to make more money and get people right addicted faster. So it is another, it's related to capitalism also, which is like, yeah, the war on drugs have not worked.
do you
It's not.
think it, yeah, no, do you think it came maliciously from, because there is this idea that the US, we basically started the opioid crisis in China when we started planting all the poppy seeds and opioids there ages ago. And so they started to have this huge opioid crisis, um, back in I think it was like 19, I don't quote me on this, but like 1940s or around there, 40s, 50s, 60s. And then we were using that poppy seed or the opioid to create these pharmaceuticals and make them into different things here. There was this kind of thought that the fentanyl was then created and started to kind of filter through our border system, um, to kind of take over our youth, our population in a very insidious way, um, because it's spread like wildfire.
Yeah, I don't know much. I've read a lot about the history of, blue collar workers and Purdue Pharma and kickbacks from doctors related to Oxycontins and really the proliferation of that. But I'm not sure much about the history of fentanyl. Um, I
Really,
do.
it wasn't around. When we were teenagers. I mean, it wasn't around when we were in our 20s. It didn't really kind of hit the scene until about, what, 2020. I mean, that's when you started to hear about it. It might have been around before that, but it didn't really.
Yeah, I don't know. I was using street opiates 15 years ago, and then it was Vicodin, Oxycontin, and it was clean, pharmaceutical. You could buy it. And there was heroin, of course, but it didn't have fentanyl in it. So there was way less risk, less overdoses. Um, and, at the time I had a doctor, right, that I was buying it from illegally, and that's, thank God, that's been cracked down a bit, but now people have, that's the saddest thing. We get a lot of people that's a similar trajectory to me, right? I went to a dentist, I had some procedure, I was given Vicodin, and I loved it. It helped my anxiety. I've always been born with this anxiety. I think it's familial and epigenetic, and I've worked through a lot of it now, thank God. But similar, right? Most people become addicted that way through surgery, back pain, something like that, and they can't get more from the doctor, right? Because now the doctors are watched, and that's a good thing. But then they have to turn to the streets, and that's where it gets scary. So before they know it, they have a major habit, and they don't know what they're getting, and a lot of people don't test what they're getting, and there's a lot of high functioning people doing this, and a lot of people that are not so high functioning. And then, of course, there's a lot of people in their early 20s who really don't know who they are yet, too. So that's an underlying component, and they're not doing much with their lives. But yeah, that's a very familiar trajectory.
Did you so with the Ibogaine treatment, are there people after treatment that maybe have already gone through the Ibogaine process that would be here in either California or all over the US, that would be like they almost could pair up, because with AA and with the 12 step, there are support groups, right? You go to a
Yeah.
meeting, you can call your sponsor. Is there something that is beginning maybe to be formed, or that is already in place for the aftercare?
Well, yeah, so we have online groups, of course, with our therapists and former Beyond clients, and there's some talk therapy there. There's also this really interesting group that started in the last few years through a couple friends. One of them is named Todd Youngs. He was in 12 step for many years. I think he still is, but he started, it's called Psychedelics in Recovery, and it really combines the best parts of 12 step. And Bill W, at the end of his life, he was touting LSD as a form of therapy, as because many people are in 12 step, but they're still not happy. There's something missing, right? So this is psychedelics in recovery. You're able to come in and talk about your psychedelic experience, how it helped you to find a higher power and addiction, right? So that's great. There isn't a specific Ibogaine help groups yet, but I think psychedelics in recovery is a good way, because it does include psychedelic assisted therapy and addiction, and there's daily online meetings, hopefully some in person soon. But I hear a lot of people joining those. There's also women's groups, there's specific men's groups, But yeah, there certainly is more we can do for that piece, right? And there needs to be more aftercare solutions. We do work closely with an aftercare center outside of Mexico City run by two functional medicine doctors. They've been doing this for 20 years. It's on, I think, 20 to 30 acres of land. It's holistic based. There's other plant medicines, but it is Ibogaine aftercare. So people can go there for 6 weeks. And that's a great place. And we really like to tell people, look, this is going to help you in the acute stage. It will detox you, it will give you a reset and minimize most of your withdrawals, and give you some, a lot of the time, some sort of a spiritual awakening and a look at your underlying pain and the way that your mind works, right? But it's really important to have this aftercare piece, especially if you've been using for 15, 10, sometimes 5, whatever it is, years. You should go to an aftercare facility that can work with acupuncture and healthy food and teach you really, and other plant medicines, be in nature. So that's a good option too. And then there's psychedelics in recovery, which is, it's good. And psychedelics in a vacuum, not taken, not used with therapy, aren't going to be very effective, right? Versus really preparing and then having somebody guide you through it, and have somebody afterwards who can zero in on various issues and topics. So I think it's a good option.
Mm, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because I think it's an important piece. And because I'm a firm believer that there's not enough, or there's not, I shouldn't say there's not enough. There needs to be more support groups, especially for boys and the youth, could be girls too, just the youth, to start to find their way, because they're so they weren't given the same 20 something experience, a lot of them, that we had, where
Yeah.
we were able to kind of go to school and be in person and have relationships with people. They
Yeah, the
haven't formed,
devices.
yeah, they haven't
Yeah.
formed the same things. And so I'm kind of coming in contact with a lot of kids that are just, they're suicidal, or
Wow.
they're lost, and they're looking for some talent that they might have that they just haven't been able to find. And so I start to get more passionate and feel very driven to find things and find groups of adults who have gone through it, or who have some type of experience that can help to give back, because we don't have a place. I've looked even for a place for Jack to go. Like, can you just go to this place and be with this group of men where they will teach you how to be a confident, strong man,
Yeah.
which we really need right now. And it's few and far between. I found some survival camps and things like that. um, but I really do think that our youth needs more nurturing.
I think you're exactly right. I think that I have heard from some geniuses in the space, and I couldn't agree more, that the future is preventative care for teenagers. What can we do before they, start to turn to drugs or maladaptive coping mechanisms at the age of 12, 13, 14? And I think some of those programs are coming, starting to be realized. So that's exciting, and you're exactly right.
And so I think, for closing, can you share with us a little bit what you see for the future of Beond, for yourself, and for how we can get this, um, you know, more out into the world?
I think my 4-year-old's just coming in. Sorry to hear him
Okay,
scream.
no.
But yeah, for the future of Beyond, we're at capacity. We're full. We need to add more space and facilities, and we would like to focus more on the aftercare piece. This is Dash, by the way.
Hi, Dash. How are you? It's been a minute.
He was just in nature. We're in the redwoods here in Mill Valley. But oh no, there the podcast goes.
Oh, it's
But
okay.
yeah,
It's perfect.
yeah, it's perfect. I think, yeah, we want to add capacity, and we're training more doctors and therapists and physicians, and hopefully can one day bring this to the United States. And for me, my passion is around accessibility. Right now we have to charge people. It's a lot. It's not a lot compared to, even after insurance and copays, it's reasonable. But how can we treat more people, more scholarships, we've started a fund already, but grow that fund. A lot of people leave us and they are passionate about sending others and sponsoring them, which is beautiful. But right, this is a giant problem and we're only just tapping the surface. So how can we make this more accessible to, we get inquiries every day from women who are living in their cars with their kids who want this, right? And we don't have the capacity, and we want to help them. And most importantly, we want to help them. We can't just send them back to their cars afterwards, but they need a whole plan, a 6-month, 1 year, 2 year plan for where they can go afterwards to learn the tools to restart their lives and do something meaningful and be there for their children. So it's heartbreaking, and that really drives me in this work. And I know that the more people we treat, the more successes that there are, will have more access to funding to be able to make this more accessible. We're starting to look at research with various universities, right? And show MRIs before and afterwards, and how this actually changes the brain. And there'll be follow-up questionnaires, and that's all very important to legitimize this and make it more mainstream. Again, and then talking about the safety aspect, and yeah, when it's used in a proper setting with physicians who are experts in this work, it is fairly safe. And yeah, that's where we're at right now. We're adding capacity, we're trying to keep up with inquiries, and hopefully we'll be able to help people that can't afford it also, which I think is very important.
It's almost like getting funding from something, from a somebody who has the same vision but has the resources to start funding these type of clinics.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The other day I heard from Melissa. I had no idea. Melissa Etheridge has a foundation that focuses specifically on opiates and plant medicines. Her son passed away because of opiates, and I was connected to the director there. So the power of celebrity in that case, for her to come forward and share her story, and the fact that plant medicines have helped her so much, which I had no idea. We're starting to see this through the power of spokespeople like her. So maybe it's not them, but organizations like that where we can make partnerships and do more work are very important.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
just I'm anything you need that I that that we can do to help continue to get the word out. We've I'm here. So, and I'm all about finding resources to make things happen, because it's huge. It's the basis, um, the grounded formation that we have to build to have that funding to build upon. And so,
Thank you. We appreciate your support, and the fact that you brought your son, and um, you were so grounded. Like, you were doing Kundalini the day that he was admitted, and I was like, and I've never seen a mother so calm and trusting. Really, like, you're a person who is obviously very connected to your higher self, and still cares a lot and loves your child. So I was like, wow, she's amazing. I want to work with her. But yeah, thank you.
I appreciated everything, and thank you so much for coming onto this podcast and talking to me.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, hopefully it's helpful. And if anyone, any listeners need support, you can reach out to us through our website. And, sometimes I respond directly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they can contact us. You guys can contact me too. I have all the information, but Talia, please share what is the Instagram, the website, all the information.
It's just beyond.us, beyond.us. What is beyond just feeling okay? What is beyond the veil, really? Beyond.us, no Y, BEOND.us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.